Hello there, all my freaky friends. I'm Keegan Glover, and welcome to the Death Podcast, where I'm gonna talk about whatever movies or TV shows I've been watching recently. This is episode one, where I'll be discussing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Nice little chainsaw sound effect there for you. Yeah, this is intense stuff. The original movie turns 50 years old this summer, so I thought it would be fitting to talk about these movies as homage to this iconic franchise. Um, so, over the past couple of weeks, I have watched all nine films in the series. I know it's a lot, but I've collected my thoughts about each one. Today, I'll give you guys a quick synopsis, tell you about the crew, the actors, any interesting facts. Then I'll let you know my general thoughts about each movie with a score at the end. I'm not going to worry too much about saying spoilers, so spoiler warning for the whole franchise. Without further ado, we're going to get started with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. Quick little fun fact, there's actually a typo in the title, as chainsaw is spelt with a space between chain and saw. Not correct, but hey, it was a low budget movie, so what can you expect? Speaking of the budget, this movie was made for about $80,000 and made over 30 million at the box office, despite being restricted and banned in several countries. Um, with inflation, that would be equivalent to a $500,000 movie making almost $200 million. Uh, so to say that it was a smash hit would be a very, very big understatement. The film was directed by Toby Hooper. It stars Marilyn Burns as Sally, who is traveling in Texas with her three friends and her brother. They find themselves terrorized by a cannibalistic family. The family is made up of three brothers, and it features the first appearance of the iconic Leatherface, played in this movie by Gunnar Hansen. Uh, Leatherface is played by different actors in almost every movie. So, all three of the brothers give their all to the movie. Uh, the actors do, and it really comes through because they're just terrifying. The dinner scene at the end of the movie is super infamous for a great reason. The three brothers are torturing Sally in this scene, and the acting from all four of them is just it's insanely good. Uh, I can't really speak highly enough about it. Same goes for Toby Hooper's direction, which is very incredible given the budget. There's shots in this movie that are just so iconic, so meaningful. He did an excellent job with the budget that he had. Um, I really could talk about the movie, this movie's integrities and the various interpretations of what it all means uh, for hours, but there are nine movies here, and I don't want to spend too much time. So let's move on. The I'll wrap it up though. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, bona fide classic. It should be watched by anyone interested in horror or any films. Uh, I simply have to give this movie a 10 out of 10. That Before we continue, I'd like to just say that all of these movies follow the same family, the Sawyer family, except they often ignore the past members of the family. Uh, the only through line, the only member who shows up in all of them is Leatherface himself. Um, and even then, it's iffy because it's not the same. Whatever. Just keep it in mind as we go. So after the first success was a huge, that first movie was a huge success. One would expect a very fast sequel. However, studio issues as well as the director not really wanting to make another one delayed the second movie until 1986. It was once again directed by Toby Hooper and features a few returning cast members, particularly Jim Sydow returns as one of the Sawyer brothers. Um, this movie follows Stretch, a radio host who overhears a murder live on air, and then the Sawyer family attempts to hunt her down and kill her. But Leatherface starts to get feelings for her, which is, it's kind of fun. Uh, This movie also features Dennis Hopper uh, playing a rogue police officer who is attempting to stop the family. He gives a very energetic performance throughout, and he breathes some good life into the movie. Um, Overall, this is a way funnier movie. It's way campier than the first one. A lot less dark in tone, um, which makes sense given the late '80s and all of the movies that came out between the two. Um, but yeah, a large part of that tone actually comes from Bill Moseley, who plays Chop Top, who is another brother of Leatherface. Um, he's psychotic in the movie. He drops a lot of jokes throughout, and makes references to all sorts of pop culture things, which is very fun. He's eccentric and all that. But this movie actually ends strangely, given that it has sequels. It it the end is pretty much all of the characters except Stretch uh, die, like very clearly. Even Leatherface dies. He gets a chainsaw through his gut, blown up by a grenade. It, it, it's it's never explained how he supposedly survived and is in the next movie. Who knows? Uh, who am I to question? The filmmakers. Overall, this movie is a clear step down, I would say, from the original, but it's different. It's fun enough for me to. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It's got some great performances. It's got good gore. Yeah, it did not do good at the box office. However, it made less than double its $4.5 million budget. Um, it did make enough, however, for them to continue the franchise, which would happen only 4 years later. Our next movie is called Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Very creative title. It was directed by Jeff Burr, who has directed several other not so good horror movies. And despite its title, really doesn't focus on Leatherface at all. Um, Sort of just the same plot as the other two, actually, but it follows a young couple as they drive through Texas. They get lost in the woods and inevitably get attacked by the Sawyer family. This movie actually features Viggo Mortensen as a new member of the family, uh, about 13 years before he played Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings. Um, he gives a very good performance, a very charming performance that adds some star power to a movie that is quite bland, in my opinion. It's got some good moments, however, most of the acting is not good, and the gore was severely cut down in post production. Um, so it's there's really not much to look at, and the direction is just not as good as the previous two films. Um, Speaking of the gore, it's very obvious that several cuts were made to the more graphic parts. Um, so a lot of the scenes actually feel unfinished, which is unfortunate. Another complaint is that the whole movie is very dark, and I don't mean in tone. I mean literally, like about half the movie is in the woods, and it's very hard to see what's going on. The characters, the action. It's very difficult to tell what's going on um, at some points. But this movie did not do well at the box office. It did worse than the last one, which makes sense given the quality and the difference in tone and quality in general. Uh, I can't really recommend this one, but Viggo Mortensen's performance is great. And there's a few scenes that are worth enjoying. Uh, anyway, I'll give this movie a solid 3 out of 10. Our next movie is the sequel to the last one, which is titled Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. It's also titled The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There was some interesting stuff. It actually had two releases, one in 95 and one in early 1996, but it doesn't really matter. Um, it's got a clear tonal shift from the last movie. It's quite clearly a comedy at this point, um, and a parody of itself. Uh, the movie follows four prom goers who, for some reason, drive off into the woods and get lost, like during prom. It doesn't make sense, but then they are, of course, pursued by our dear Sawyer family. This movie actually has two very big movie stars, Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey. Makes an appearance and it's one of his earliest films. They both give very good performances, and McConaughey's character is particularly despicable. Um, him being the main antagonist of this movie, uh, next to Leatherface. Uh, the director is Kim Henkel, who was actually a writer, and co-producer on the original film, which she does a good job, but with re-edits and re-releases, the plot has become incoherent at best, and I don't know. This movie has good moments and it's got all right gore, but the comedy, the jokes, the parody, it doesn't really work for me. It feels very mean spirited at times, which isn't great. It also portrays Leatherface as an incompetent child, which like he's just screaming the whole time. I'm not a fan of it. Um, this movie did not do well at the box office. It actually put the franchise on ice until 2003, um, which we'll look at next. I don't like this movie, but I understand it. It has a cult following. Um, some people like it a lot, but I'll give it another 3 out of 10. The next film came after 8 years of no Texas Chainsaw movies and was released by Platinum Dunes, who is renowned in the horror industry for making uh, remakes. They made the Friday the 13th remake, and they made the uh, Nightmare on Elm Street remake, and a few others. But this movie is, in fact, a direct remake of the original. It ignores all four of the movies we talked about so far. Takes place in its own universe with its own characters. The plot is very similar to the original, but it's got its own twists and turns. It's not completely the same. Uh, so this movie stars a young Jessica Biel as the protagonist and features Arlie Ernie as the very scary Sheriff Hoyt, who you may know Ernie from his standout performance in Full Metal Jacket. Um, he gives a great performance here as well, and the rest of the family is also great, including Leatherface in this movie. He's very good too. Um, and this is one of the scarier movies in the franchise. For some reason, the family is not they're not the Sawyers in this movie. They're the Hewitt family. I still don't know why they changed it. I couldn't find any answers, but what do I know? Um, this movie has one of my favorite kills in the franchise. The opening kill, it was really awesome. Um, Sets a great tone for the movie. I'm not going to spoil that, but uh, the rest of the movie really couldn't match the same energy or that same quality. Uh, Unfortunate, but anyway, this movie actually ends with Sheriff Hoyt being killed by Jessica Biel's character, as well as her chopping off Leatherface's arm, um, which would have made it very difficult for them to do sequels to this movie. Uh, and so it never got one. Um, the next film is actually a prequel to this movie. Makes sense. Uh, anyway, this movie actually surprised me with its quality. It's not, it's certainly not to the level of the original, but it's got some great kills. Uh, it's got some decent gore, but I do wish it tried a bit harder to be its own movie. I also wish there was a bit more gore. You can definitely tell it got restricted by the studios, but that's okay. I give this movie A 6 out of 10. A solid score. Our next film is titled The Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. Came out only 3 years later in 2006, directed by the same person, and it serves as a prequel to the previous entry, as I said before. It has many returning cast members, including R. Lee Ermey, returning as Sheriff Hoyt, who, again, is excellent. We learn in this movie how he took over power in the town and became sheriff, as well as how some other character quirks in the first movie came to be. Um, this movie follows a group of four young folk who get in a car accident and then they face the wrath of the Hewitts, Leatherface, Hoyt, their brothers, the mom, the whole family. The plot's not really original. You can probably tell that. Um, and this movie does suffer from us knowing that it's a prequel and that the antagonists won't really die in this movie. Um, you kind of know how it's going to end before it ends. This movie does have a lot more gore, a surprisingly uh, more amount of gore, which my theory is that Saw, the movie Saw, came out in 2004, which had a lot of gore. Um, and that's really changed the landscape about what people were looking for in movies. Um, so they, cranked it up in this one. The gore is it looks great, and it's probably the best part of the movie actually. Apart from the returning performance from R. Lee Ermey, who is still awesome. Uh, Despite this movie feels like a downgrade. The plot's less interesting, and the characters are less interesting. And apart from the returning cast, the acting is not as good. Um, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. After the franchise once again changed studios, you'll hear about that a lot. Uh, our next movie is another reboot. Um, the previous two movies never got any more sequels, and they are in their own universe. And yeah, that's just them. But this is Texas Chainsaw 3D from 2013. It's a direct sequel to the original 1974 movie. It ignores all of the three sequels to that movie as well as the remakes, as I said. This movie follows Alexandra Daddario's character as she goes to Texas and discovers that she's part of the Sawyer family. She then has to face some moral dilemmas about whether she should stick with the family or not because of their history with murdering people. Um, it offers a much more narratively focused movie, much more plot driven than the rest of the franchise, which is rather refreshing. Refreshing, actually. Um, the acting is not great. Uh, some of the characters are pretty good, but the it also doesn't have nearly as many familial antics as the the as I like. Um, it really is only Leatherface in this movie for the Sawyer family, which is okay, but you know, I would like some more. But you know, I really like the plot of this movie, and the gore is maybe the best we've seen. Um, it suffers a little bit from having some not good CG at the end, but that's okay. The rest of the gore is very good. I think this is a very solid entry. Um, and if the franchise didn't get bounced around the studios so often, it would have had I think 5 sequels they had planned, but there were delays and it bounced around more studios, so those movies never got made. It did, however, get a prequel movie, which we'll look at next. Um, but overall, I'll give this movie a 6 out of 10. So, as I said, our next movie is the prequel. It's 2017's Leatherface. That's the whole title, is just Leatherface. Um, Like I said, it serves as a prequel to both the original 1974 movie and the 2013 entry. So this is the oldest movie chronologically in the series. Um, this is probably the most different movie in the whole franchise. Um, it really doesn't fit in with the rest of the series from its plot alone. We follow several juvenile inmates, sorry, five of them to be exact, as they escape from an asylum and go on the run. Um, one of them being a teenage Leatherface. This movie has some excellent moments, some very good kills, but it's also got some very mean spirited moments, which, like I said, I'm not a fan of that. Um, the acting's a pretty mixed bag. Some of it's like very good, some of it's not good at all. Um, but I like how it sets up the original movie and the 2013 movie. It does it well. Um, I also think the last 20 minutes of this movie are really good. Uh, when Leatherface gets back with his family, the Sawyers, uh, and they they truly make him into Leatherface. And Sam Strike, who plays the Leatherface in this movie, he does a great job at showing the change in mindset over time. And then at the end, he does great physical acting, um, and it really feels like he is Leatherface. But I digress. Um, the this is the this movie was delayed in its production, and it's actually why the studio lost uh, franchise rights. Um, was because there were issues in production, so it was delayed almost 8 months um, to be released. So they weren't able to make more. Um, I think that's a shame. I think this would have been a good one to jump off of, but who knows? Maybe they wouldn't have been good. Anyway, I give this movie a 7 out of 10. Our final film in the franchise. This is number 9. Came out in 2022, very recent, and it was released direct to Netflix under the title Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's different from the original, which is The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's also different from just Texas Chainsaw, which we discussed earlier. So I'll be honest, I don't like this movie, um, but I'll do my best to explain it. It's got moments, but whatever. It follows a group of young adults looking to gen, gentrify, excuse me, an old Texan town, which is home to Leatherface. He's living in an old orphanage there. They're looking to make the town, nice and new. He's not a big fan of that. And then antics ensue. Uh, the movie does not have any other members of the Sawyer family except Leatherface, which I'm not a fan of. The Sawyer family is really what makes the franchise stand out. Um, so it really doesn't fit in my opinion. But I do like the way that the protagonist characters in the movie, they all feel like layered people, real people for the most part. Um, they're still characters, of course, but they have realistic emotions and everything. Um, Along with this, the gore in this movie is very good, particularly in one sequence when Leatherface, kills everybody on a whole bus. It's great. I really enjoy the scene. Um, Unfortunately, that scene's about halfway through, and the rest of the movie just doesn't ever come close to that. Um, and so, yeah, the it's also got some very very stupid subplots that sink the movie. Um, just some things that didn't need to be in it. Um, like, clearly, I don't like this. I don't have much else to say about the movie. If you want to watch it, it's on Netflix. It's an easy watch, 90 minutes, whatever. Go watch it if you like. I'm not gonna. Uh, I'll give it a 4 out of 10. So, thank you for listening to my first podcast. I'm not sure if I'll continue making more after this, but it was a lot of work, so we'll see. But shout out to Professor Quasman for giving so much freedom on her assignments. It's really awesome to be able to do this for an English assignment. Um, yeah. All right. Have a good one.